Hello, everyone, and welcome to Exhausted Sparrows Unite, the podcast where we let go of doing it all perfectly and embrace the beauty of giving ourselves grace. I'm Krista Jones with my co-host, Chantel Schaefer. Today, we are diving into a topic that so many of us struggle with. I'm going to be honest right here. It is a topic that I mostly struggle with, and I'm like, well, why the heck not? Let me give myself some help, self-help today. We are going to talk about asking for help. If you've ever felt guilty and uncomfortable reaching out for support, trust me when I say you are not alone. In this episode, we're going to explore why asking for help is not only okay, but it is essential to live authentically. So we're going to embrace ourselves, we're going to allow ourselves some grace, and we're going to allow others to support us. So Chantel, are you ready to dive in?
I am scared because just like you, this is a hard pill to swallow.
It is so hard to ask for help that Chantel and I actually said, maybe that should be like podcast 9, 10, 15, or 20. Like maybe we shouldn't make it one of the first few since neither of us master it well.
Yeah, but here we are.
But here we are.
Here we are.
And it's all very ironic. The whole title of the podcast, Exhausted Sparrows Unite, is based around the charity that I founded about 13 years ago called Sparrow's Nest here in the Hudson Valley, which is located in New York. We service 5 counties, and we help people through a cancer diagnosis by supporting them, giving them homemade meals. We don't repeat a recipe for at least a year. And, it's really the entire charity is based around asking for help and being able to accept help. And I'm like, wow, I don't think I'd ever call the charity myself.
No, you wouldn't.
So it's a weird thing. But, when I thought, oh, God has a sense of humor in this whole thing, I kind of feel like what he did for me is he made me as a person that cannot ask for help. He knows how hard it is for me. He kind of, I feel, put me in this position because I am able to relate to other people and figure out ways that I can lessen the guilt so that they eventually ask for help. But I kind of feel like a lot of times this help thing comes, from an early age. I know in my family, I grew up with 2 brothers. We moved all over the place. We have said witness protection program. We're not sure. My dad was in the newspaper business. He's an Italian guy in the newspaper business.
You can't see the air quotes, but they are happening.
Oh, they're happening right now. And I remember one time, I'm getting a little bit off topic, but one time I remember some boys approached me while I was trying to make a phone call because my friend couldn't get in her house. My dad was waiting for us in the car, and we're making a phone call at a 7-Eleven on a payphone because that's how old I am. And I remember all of a sudden, I was afraid because these boys approached us. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I'm 13 years old. They're probably 18. And I was like, don't approach me. Don't approach me. And they approached me. And then there was my dad.
Yay, Dad.
And it was like a look. And I was like, my girlfriend's like, he is mafia. I'm like, he probably is. But anyways, I grew up all over the place, started in Connecticut, moved to Florida, went to Louisiana, St. Louis, all over. And my mom was basically a single mom. I mean, mom and dad, good relationship, but my dad worked an awful lot because he didn't graduate from high school. And, he really had to prove himself in the world of newspapers. So like he was, he used to do paper routes. I think that's where he started at like 4 a.m.
Wow.
Throwing the paper out. And then, from there, he started working at the front desk, and then he went into circulation, and then eventually became the circulation manager, and he had to work his way up. So mom, this is the long part of the story, mom kind of had us all to herself. And at the time, I didn't really realize that we could have gotten help from other areas. My mom did it all. When we moved to Florida, we didn't know a lot of people. So she did everything. She cooked, she cleaned, she was the person that did our homework. She worked. She was the person that made our lunches. She was the person that was our therapist. Mom was absolutely everything. And that's kind of how I grew up. So I didn't really know that there was a different way. And being younger, I just thought, wow, she's this superhero. I didn't realize that she was exhausted and she wasn't holding it all together well. And then, years later, you get older and you are able to talk to your mom about things, and she's able to be honest with you then about things. And she was like, Krista, I didn't have any of it together. At one point, my dad, he lost his job not long after we moved somewhere. So he immediately found another job in North Carolina. And he said to my family, don't move there because I don't see this lasting. So there was a whole year that he was in the Carolinas and we were, I think, in Louisiana. And I mean, probably really, really stressful, but she managed to keep all of that away from us. But I think it's really, what kind of rooted me into, well, you don't ask for help, even from your husband.
Yeah.
Like you don't ask for help from anyone.
Yeah. You kind of become trained to just figure it out on your own.
Right. And it looked easy when she was doing it. I mean, I didn't know any differently. I didn't know that, you hide a lot when you're a mom just because you got to get through it. So it looked easy. So it's sort of how I've grown up. I've grown up just not really asking anyone to do anything for me.
Yeah. Yeah. My story is similar in some ways. One of 4 girls. We didn't travel or move around. My dad was the quote unquote breadwinner, and my mom did all the house stuff. And I have a handicapped sister. She's in a wheelchair. And when you grow up with somebody who is dependent or mostly dependent, you learn that your needs are not that important and that you fulfill your own needs because there are people who need more or more support, and you become more independent in that situation. And that's how it's been my whole life, is I've just learned how to fend for myself. And that's not to slight anybody in my household or my sister, but much like you, I've learned to just take care of things.
Yeah. And I think it has led for me to a lot of issues just in my house and my marriage and everything, because, my mom just did everything probably a little bit martyr-like, because then what that created is it was never good enough, right? If my dad wanted to do it or anybody else wanted to do it. So we were all like, all right, just do it. And it created this beast. And then she was, probably upset, as I in my own household will get, but then I'll stop and think, but I created this. Like, all right, why can't I let you pick up? It's not the way I would pick up, but why can't I get over that and just let you pick up so that it does take something off my plate and I am getting help, and then there's this whole, well, you don't do it the way I do it, and this whole perfectionist thing. And it just gets into like this deep cycle.
It does. And, in a whole different vein for that is this, I learned about this recently, this mental load of motherhood or womanhood, where you have to ask for the help, right? You have to ask for it. It's make a list. Tell me what to do. But that's another task on your plate. And that to me is even more exhausting, that I have to sit down, stop what I'm doing, make a list. I need you to do this, 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 and this. And then I have to follow up to make sure it was done.
Right.
And it just adds even more, and it just makes me do it. Do it myself, because it's just easier at that point.
Right.
And that causes some contention in my household as well.
Yeah. And so I think this whole, how in the world do I ask for help thing, like it's a really deep thing, because the social norm, we talk about this filtered life all over social media. The norm is this independence. Once women got independence, way back in the 60s and the 70s, and they were fighting for equal rights and all this stuff. I'm like, well, dang it. What that really did is put me in the workforce, but I've still got all this work at home. And then now you have social media on top of all this in the 2000s, which, you see all these moms juggling all this stuff. Chantel and I are actually in the process of, I don't even know why we added this to our plates. I think I added it to mine, and then I rubbed off on her, but like we're making bread from starter. Like we need one more thing on our plates. But you look at all of this stuff on social media and you're like, wow, they hold it all together and they have no help. And so I think these are the social norms now that none of us talk about how we're falling apart. All of us just say, I got it. It's fine. I don't need any help.
Yep.
So that's a problem. And then I think I just read this great article It was in Science Fridays, and it was amazing. And what it basically said, and here's me, because I read it and I went, oh. Another reason that we don't ask for help, other than the fact that we want to look like everybody else who's faking it till they make it, and it's not even a real thing, is because we have personal fears. A fear of rejection, a fear that somebody's going to say no to you, which has happened to me in the past, a fear that I'm going to look weak. And for me, this was a good one. I was like, wow, a fear that I am being a burden.
You literally just took the words out of my mouth. As you were talking, I went, we're going on the burden train because I feel it. I know it.
Yeah.
For real.
It's a true thing, right?
It really is.
And I don't know. I guess I also don't have enough confidence in you as a person, not Chantel, but just whoever, that you can handle whatever I'm giving you, because why would it be a burden? I'm giving you, I don't know, whatever task I'm giving you, I was going to do the task. If I was going to do the task and it wasn't a burden, why would it be for you? But there's like all of this, it's just all of this crazy stuff mixed in that has to do with our self-esteem.
Yeah.
So when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, that is me. You know, and we've all had people that we've reached out to, we've asked for help and they've said no, and it's disappointing and it's hurtful. And we've had people that we've reached out and we've asked for help and they've said yes. And like you said earlier, just then never followed through. And you get to that point where you're like, ugh, I'm just going to do it myself.
Yeah.
I know what I want. I don't want to write a list and I'm going to do it myself. So it leads to, when I was reading these articles, I was like, oh my gosh, this is childhood. This is so much from our childhoods.
It really is. Everything can get traced back to some kind of experience or trauma or, you know, part of your childhood. And I know we talked about that somewhere
in these episodes.
Yes,
I think we talk
did.
about it in every episode. Everything kind of relates back to the way you are is something that's happened through experiences somewhere in your life. And that's kind of where we are. So asking for help, you know, we grew up in an era where our moms really were going through this whole independence thing with women. And then nobody ever like sat down and really thought that through, that doesn't mean you can't ask for help because you're an independent person. And I think for me, that's where my brain gets all confused. Well, I'm independent. That means I shouldn't ask for help. But that's not true. That's not the case, because episode 1, we said you cannot do it all and do it all well. Your brain cannot possibly hold the 40 things that you need to do: pottery, I don't know, making this up because we're around the holidays, bread starter, taking care of the children, doing your job. You cannot do it all well when you have all of this stuff on your plate, and you do have to learn to designate. And it just took us 9-10 episodes to get here, because Chantel and I are like, did you get any better at designating before the episode? And we're both like, no.
Nope.
So, all right, we know that it's hard, right? But why do we need to ask for help, right? Like, even though it's hard, why is asking for help so vital? So in all of this research that I'm doing, I had these really great books that I was reading. There's a benefit of asking for help. That was a good book. And one of the things it says is really for your mental and your emotional self, you need to ask for help, because asking for help will reduce your stress and will reduce burnout. And I was like, wow. We are the day before we are taking off for the holidays. We're going to take 2 weeks off. And I said to Chantel, I go, it's going to be a new me in January, because I am so burnt out right now. I don't even know what you're going to get from me today. So I was like, that's so funny that it said that in that book. But it will reduce our stress and our mental health. And let's be honest, I feel a little bit bitter inside.
Yeah, it does. It makes you resentful.
And I don't know why I'm resentful. I didn't even ask you for help, and now I'm mad at you.
Yes. And again, this is where the areas of contention come into my household. And my husband and I have gotten much better at communicating about these things. A few years ago, I asked for a house cleaning for Christmas. I said, I don't care if you buy me. I don't care if there's nothing under the tree. I want somebody else to come into my home and clean. That's all I want. And every year since, he has made that happen, and I don't have to ask anymore. I asked one time, and it happens every year. And it is by far the best gift outside of my children. And it's just because for that one...
And your husband. He comes after the house cleaning.
The
It's
house
okay.
cleaning. I mean, they
It is a
move
good
my
thing.
furniture and they find the cat hair. But that's just one, like I said it one time, and that's where he's really good is if I say something one time, he holds on to it and he remembers that.
But that's what we have to do. We have to say it.
Yeah.
And I feel that I don't do that. And then I get mad at people and I'm like, I am the most irrational human being on the planet. Because I'm expecting you to sense just how burnt out I am. But yet in the same breath, I am expecting to look fine on the outside so that everybody thinks I have it all together. Wow, what an authentic mess.
That's really all we are. I mean, I always like that meme where it's like, I'm like your web browser with 57 different tabs open and a video playing in the background. And, I always think about my phone, when it starts to lag, I have to close every one of the apps that I've had open for the past week. And we really need to do that for ourselves. And sometimes that's saying, hey, Krista, I got way too many tabs open. I need a little help here, please. Close my tabs.
Can we get shirts that say close my tabs?
That might be taken the wrong way.
I guess
that
could be.
Yeah, close all my apps.
I guess it could be. So as we're talking about, right, letting go of some of our tasks, which will reduce our stress and it will reduce our burden. It means that it will, of course, provide a sense of relief. We'll feel better about that. And it also then improves our coping mechanisms because there's a little bit less on our plate and we're getting social support. So that too is so important to talk about. By somebody else helping you feel loved. My friend Beth had come in because weeks and weeks ago, she had not felt good. And so I think I made her soup. I don't remember what I did. She had a back injury. I said, I'm just going to drop everything and take you to the doctor. And she's like, no, you have so much to do. I know how much you work, so all these things. And I said to her, you're taking away the joy of me helping you. I want to do that for you. And she was like, ouch. So what I realized about myself is if I somehow hurt your feelings in the process of not asking you for help, then I'm going to start piling it on. Like if I know that I've hurt you, I have this empathy thing that we're going to talk about that too one week. But I don't want to upset people. And it really is true. I just know for myself, if you, Chantel, were going about your day and you had a million things and you were about to cry, I would be so sad to know that you didn't just say, hey, Krista, can I leave 20 minutes early to pick up my kids? Hey, Krista, can you run to Stop and Shop for me because I need butter? I don't know. But, I think about, I would feel sad if somebody doesn't ask for help. And when somebody gives help, it shows you this friendship, this sense of love.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the love languages, some people is gift giving and some people is active service. And if you don't let somebody fulfill their love language to you, that hurts. That's hurtful. Like I'm an active service person. I'm you need food. I'm cooking food for you. I'll come clean your home. And that makes me feel good because I feel useful to you.
Sure.
And you're right. If you deny me that, that's hurtful.
Yeah.
And it makes me feel like I'm not of service.
And that helps to build your friendships and your relationships because it's also showing that you trust somebody enough to let something go and you trust somebody enough for them to see how vulnerable you are in that moment because to say I need help means I don't have it all together.
Yeah.
I need somebody to help me out.
And how good for everybody's mental health to see that none of us have it all together. Because it hurts and it's hard to keep that front up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's be real and authentic and vulnerable.
Absolutely. But you're right, because if you're always around those friends where everything is fine, I'm just as superficial then as you are.
Yes.
I will never get deeper with you because I don't know that, today, you're, ready to, knock your husband with a frying pan. I mean, I don't suggest it. Not that I've ever had those feelings, maybe once or twice, but like it is, you're letting someone in, and people want to feel needed.
Mm-hmm.
I love that I'm needed in this community. I love that we're needed in this community. That is why I started the charity, because you need food and it's something I can do.
Yeah.
It's something I don't care if I'm cooking for 500 people or 50 people. You know, I feel that I am able to help you and I'm able to lighten your load. And that brings me such joy. So it's kind of like you can't just expect other people to rely on you if you don't rely back on them. That's a one-sided friendship.
Mm.
That's what you got for me is
I just, you say these things and they like wash over, and I just got to let them stew for a second because I'm going, I feel seen.
And you know what it is? I, being in radio, have always been taught there should be no radio silence. And so if you don't say anything, I'm like, oh, she didn't like it.
No, it's because I did like it. Well, no, I didn't, because I feel seen.
It's because you feel seen. It's because it spoke to you. So I feel that when we can be vulnerable with other people, which is always a work in progress, especially like me, if you have 40 plus years to undo all that, you know, has been done to get you, you know, with this big wall built up where you can take everything on, you also want to make sure that you're asking the right people, I think. Because when I was like reading this article, and this article was saying, you know, people want to feel needed and people appreciate when you ask. It is true to a certain extent. I think if you're like me and you're afraid of rejection, I think then you also have to know who you're asking. You have to ask somebody that will follow through. We all have friends that, you know, they're fun friends, but they are very me friends. Like you have to know your audience.
Yes.
And who you can ask and who you can't ask. So small steps are important, and being clear and concise in what you need. That's what I would say about my husband and I. I have to say clearly. And not only do I say it, I notice that he really latches onto it when I say, you know, I'm feeling very overwhelmed. And if you could do this for me, it would be so appreciative. It would take so much off of me. He wants to feel helpful. He wants to feel like the man of the family. He wants to know. And after he does it, I try to make a cognizant effort to say, you know, thank you so much for doing that. Like that just took so much off of my plate. Now, sometimes one time he made me eggplant parm. One time, Chantel.
One time.
And I said, thank you. And he'll bring it up like every 8 months. Like, remember that time I made eggplant? So don't create a monster either, but being clear and specific and concise so that you also don't have this little bitterness like, well, that's not what I told you to do at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to have people repeat it back to you.
And write it down.
And write it down. And acknowledging your feelings, right? Acknowledging this is so uncomfortable for me to ask, because I had a friend do that to me, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. She said, this is so uncomfortable for me, but could you get my kids for me? It was one of our neighbors and she was in this jam. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. But I knew how hard it was for her to even ask me. So she immediately said, this is uncomfortable. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that vulnerability. And I was like, girl, I get it. But that I also felt I can go back to her and I can say something now because she knows and I get it.
Yeah.
So being, you know, uncomfortable is okay to admit. Offering that gratitude after somebody has done it is also, I think it's a little bit of an issue for me too, because I think I go overboard in my thanking because I really am that grateful for it because I'm not used to people doing it, of course, which goes to the fact that I don't ask for it. So of course people aren't doing it. But then I kind of sometimes go a little overboard. Like I will probably tell you 5 times when all you've done is on your way in. Maybe you've gotten me I don't drink coffee. I don't know. Maybe you got me an energy drink. And like, I'll be like, thank you so much. Like you have no idea. I really like in everything I do, I have to thank you like 5 times.
And that can get uncomfortable.
Yeah. So I have to learn to thank you once. I'm glad that I'm teaching myself some things in these podcasts. Yeah. And normalize it. We have to normalize it. That's another thing. To make it easier, we have to normalize it. So on my calendar, Chantel and I have I don't know, we have like 87 different calendar names that all go into one calendar, but I have a Krista that's just a Krista. And I actually have once a week to ask for help in something and then normalize it. So I might say something to Michelle or to Chantel or Chris or Beth or somebody here. It might be my husband, but I'll ask them for something and then I'll make sure next week I'm kind of asking again, because you don't want to just do a one and done either, because it makes it awkward still for you. The more you ask, and don't go overboard that way either. But the more you ask, the more likely that it'll get less uncomfortable for you.
I've actually started asking my kids for help because I want them to know that even as adults, we need it. So I'll be like, hey, can you come help me unload the dishwasher? Can you help me put your clothes away? Help me pick up this. Because I want them to know that even as mom, I need help, because I don't want them to feel like I do as an adult when it comes to asking for help.
I also noticed too with my own mom, because my mom did not ask for help and she did it all in her house. She just wanted to do it all. I went into my first apartment not even knowing how to do laundry. Like, it really didn't do me any good. So when my kids were like 12, 13, I said, listen, you're all doing your own laundry. I think they were 12. And what I said to them is, we started off small, but I said, and if you don't put it away, you're wearing wrinkled clothes. So I started these small things as well. Things too that people would really appreciate you asking for help. If I'm talking to caregivers out there of any kind, mom, dads, grandparents, whoever's watching younger kids too, we in some senses are doing a disservice when we're not asking them to do help around the house. And I know some of you are listening and you're like, this does not even resonate with me, girl, because my kids have 14 chores a week. But I didn't have a lot of chores because my mom wanted to kind of do it all and was used to doing it all. And at the end of the day, it would have been helpful for me to give her help. And like you just said, it would have been helpful for me not to consider her this superwoman, because then I try to emulate that and I fail every day miserably because I can't possibly keep it all together. And my mom still to this day, I love my mom, and I don't think she'll ever listen to this podcast, and I love her, and she means well, but she will walk in my house and she'll be like, ooh, because let me be honest with you, Chantel, I don't clean my house anywhere near as well as my mom did. And I say to her, you were able to stay home. I am trying to do all that you did and work a 50-hour-a-week job. Something has to be let go, and I'm okay and I'm comfortable in it. But all of these things that we think we're helping and we're this smart and we're doing all this good really can hurt other people around us, especially when we're young. Because I thought all these things about my mom, and then I realized, oh my gosh, she really needed more help. But I didn't know. She didn't vocalize it. I was young. I had no idea.
It's funny you talk about your mom coming over. My mom watched my kids before they started school, and she would come to my house and watch my kids, and I would come home and she'd be like, I cleaned your house for you. And I took that as an insult. I've never told her that, but I took it as an insult, like, you're not doing a very good job, so I did it for you.
Right.
It might have been a gift. It probably was completely well-meaning, but it was hurtful for me. And then I started becoming super stressed and super cleaning my house before she would come so that she wouldn't think poorly of my housekeeping skills.
And wouldn't think that needed to be one of the tasks put on her when she came over, which then only put more on your workload.
Yeah, it was rough. And again, I think she came from a completely well-meaning place, but because I'm a mom and
you were already feeling like you were dropping the ball then when she said that.
It's hard enough to leave your kids as babies and then to have this feeling that, well, you're not keeping your house adequately for your babies either. I didn't sleep ever.
Oh.
Yeah. And I wish I would have just said, you know what, Mom, thank you for helping me.
Right. I can't keep this all together.
Exactly.
So if you want to clean when you're here, you don't have to. But if you want to, you can.
Yeah.
And also, I'm okay if things are a little bit cluttered. My house definitely looks lived in. And I say to my husband all the time, he'll come home, I'll purposely put on hoarders. And I'm like, and there you go, honey. He'll be like, ew. And I'm like, does your house look like that? He'll be like, no. I'm like, then be quiet. But there's just so many great things that we can do. And, because this podcast really is about us being vulnerable and authentic, which I think just talking to the masses, I've probably said more than even my closest friends know, just Chantel and I chatting with all of you guys. It also means we want you guys to know that like the whole purpose of this podcast is to show like you can't keep it all together, but you also have to be compassionate and you've got to give yourself grace for it. I mentioned grace in almost every podcast. And if you don't know what grace is, grace really is being able to give yourself and others around you the ability to know that like we're not perfect. We are by no means have it all together, and it's okay. Tomorrow's another day and the weekend is the weekend. And if you can't get stuff done to the weekend, then you do. And if today you didn't ask anybody for help and you're like, well, Krista told me to, and then I didn't. Okay, maybe tomorrow you will. Small steps.
Tomorrow's a new day.
Tomorrow's a new day. And giving yourself grace for other people, I think, because if someone can't ask you for help, I'm talking about me personally. If you know that I'm a person that won't accept help, sometimes you just have to do it. I have a surgery coming up. And I have a girlfriend that already said, hey, listen, I know that you don't like help. And I know that you will not allow us to come every day to your house with food. She said, but I'm going to do once a week. She didn't really ask. She kind of told me, but nothing that is overwhelming and is going to be in my space. And she acknowledged how I am as a person. And she said, but this is what I'm going to do. And I'm like, okay. So sometimes you have to give some grace for people that won't accept it. Don't take it personally. They're a work in progress. Chantel, nicest person. Doesn't mean that she's, not a nice person. She just, it's hard for her to ask for help, but doing something helpful for her would be, wonderful.
Yeah. Having
grace for the person that, that really doesn't know how to ask you when they need something. And I think being aware of that, really, this awareness that my friend is falling apart. I'm just going to pick up her kids. I'm just going to book a massage.
Yeah.
I'm going to call her boss and say, hey, I'm going to surprise her. She's just going to come in an hour later today. Like, I don't know what that looks like. And it doesn't have to be that extreme, knocking on the door and saying, hey, let's sit outside on the porch for 10 minutes. What can I help you with?
Let's go for a walk. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's cry. Let's scream. Let's yell. Whatever you need.
That alone can open up a conversation. So somebody that is so afraid to ask for help can at least say things in a conversation that can guide you to ways that you can help them, even if they don't ask you.
Yeah.
They can give you little tidbits in a conversation that can make you say, okay, here's what I can do. And this is what I'm going to do for her tomorrow. Or I'm going to have a conversation with so-and-so because, they want her to be PTA president again. And I'm going to say to so-and-so, she's got a lot on her plate. Don't ask. Little things that maybe you can do that can help relieve a burden on someone that, doesn't really know how to ask you for it. I don't know.
Yeah.
There are things.
There are a lot of things.
Yeah.
We could talk about this for a very long time.
We can, but I think what you and I are going to do is we are going to put it in action this week and next week. And we're going to go away for our break. We're podcasting this during the holidays. So of course we're stressed out, but we're going to, come back and we're going to have a fresh mindset. But sometimes taking a lot off of your plate and soaking and absorbing will let you come back fresh and will let you feel more comfortable asking people for help in areas you need. So Chantel, this is your homework. Over the next 2 weeks while you're on break, and my homework too, we're going to figure out areas that we can maybe use some help in and maybe have some conversations or even 1 or 2 conversations with people that we need to so that they can help us and take a little bit of the stress off our plate.
Noted.
I'm putting it on our calendar. Thank you so much for joining us today on this latest edition. The episodes, the podcast, it's all going so amazingly well. We have thousands of downloads and we're only 7-8 weeks in. We appreciate it. If you love what we're doing, you can go to sparrowsnestcharity.org, learn a little bit more about the charity. You can also join our Facebook page, which we are in the process of getting together on social media. But share this podcast with a friend wherever you get your podcast. And remember, living authentically means that you need to give yourself some grace and you have to let others support you. Until next time, be kind to yourself and each other.